For decades, the Kennedy clan has been one of America's most powerful and most prosperous. But they also have a lot of kids, leaving RFK Jr. with less than what you might expect. Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis, a breaking news reporter here at Forbes. Joining me now is Forbes senior editor, Chase Peterson Withorn. Chase, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Forbes is tracking the net worths of all 2024 presidential hopefuls. You're looking into Robert F. Kennedy Jr. My first question, what's his net worth?
Yeah, so we estimate Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s net worth to be about $15 million.
Huge number. Walk us through that a little bit. How did he amass that wealth?
Yeah, so, obviously 15 million is, a pretty substantial net worth to have, although it might surprise some people because, of course, he's a Kennedy, and the Kennedys are known for being extremely wealthy, and 15 million is not a low number, but we estimated the whole Kennedy family's net worth in 2015 to be like 1.2 billion. So 15 million is a relatively small portion of that, but basically we think RFK Jr.'s put together about $15 million. Some of that's tied up in real estate, about a quarter of it. Another quarter of it or so comes from Kennedy Family Trusts. And then his wife, Cheryl Hines, the actress, her net worth is included in our analysis. And we think she has at least $1 million or so tied up in some retirement accounts. And then they have, a sort of some cash in the bank and other holdings. And so when you add it all up, it comes out to about $15 million.
$15 million compared in the grand scheme of $1.2 billion really is chump change. So why is his wealth so little compared to the entire Kennedy family?
Yeah, I mean, I think the sort of easy, simple explanation is just that the Kennedy family tree is very large and it has a lot of branches. So, RFK Jr. is one of 29 grandchildren of Joe and Rose Kennedy, who created the fortune. And then there are more than 100 sort of great-grandchildren and other descendants on down the line. So once you start to spread wealth among generations in a large Irish Catholic family, many of the branches, had themselves large Irish Catholic families. It all starts to get sort of spread out, pretty quickly. And so, especially for somebody like RFK Jr., who himself was one of 11 children of Bobby and Ethel Kennedy. So even sort of within his branch, he's sort of in one of the bigger branches of a tree that has many branches.
Yeah, definitely. It's like a pie. And when you get smaller and smaller, those slices of pie get tinier and tinier. But $15 million slice pie isn't that bad. Can you walk us through the Kennedy family political dynasty a little bit? And let's go back to the beginning. How did they build that wealth?
Yeah, so basically, the Kennedy family fortune begins with Joe Kennedy. And, he started establishing trusts for his kids in the 1920s. And so we're talking, 100 years ago. Joe Kennedy basically got rich as a stock speculator, as a real estate investor. He owned a Hollywood studio for a while. He had a liquor importing business. There were rumors that, that he was involved in bootlegging during the Prohibition, although I think that hard evidence of that hasn't necessarily ever been found. But created a serious fortune, and basically had aspirations that his children would sort of use that money to go into public service, to go into government, and so sort of establish trusts for his kids so that they would remain wealthy for a long time, and then encouraged his son John F. Kennedy, who became president. And then Bobby Kennedy, who's RFK Jr.'s father, was the attorney general, and then he was a senator, and then he was running for president in 1968 when he was assassinated. And then RFK Jr.'s uncle, Ted Kennedy, was a longtime senator who also ran for president. And then, of course, there are tons of other members of the Kennedy family that are ambassadors or have been ambassadors, congressmen, local offices, even have just married into other politicians like Maria Shriver, who used to be married to Arnold Schwarzenegger, who was the governor of California. So the family sort of started with Joe Kennedy's riches and sort of morphed into this political dynasty where they sort of helped taken their wealth and used it to allow them to sort of go into public service.
I do want to talk about Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the candidate. As you said, he's part of this long history of Democrats. He's running as a Democrat, but his views, I was just in Iowa at the Iowa State Fair. He was there. I had a chance to ask him some questions. And one of my biggest takeaways from the fair was that Republicans were very interested. Republicans wanted, if they were Trump supporters, some of them said, hey, I would want Donald Trump to tap him as vice president. Are his views and his platform similar to his family's?
Yeah, it's really interesting because he's the fourth Kennedy to run for president, and he's sort of the first one to do it without the major backing of his family. I mean, several prominent members of the family have come out and denounced certain things that he said. As far as I can tell, the Kennedy family isn't putting big money into his campaign, whereas, John F. Kennedy's campaign very famously, there's a famous story where Joe Kennedy's, the way it goes is that Joe Kennedy said, I'm not paying for a landslide. And that was a very close election. And so it was known that Joe Kennedy's money was behind JFK. Whereas for RFK, he's doesn't really have the backing of his family. And instead he's sort of courting small donors and some big, big donors as well, including Timothy Mellon, who is a Trump supporting, heir himself and a Republican. And so he kind of has carved out this sort of interesting niche where he's catering to, he's trying to play up the Kennedy family name, and he's running as a Democrat, and he's part of a family that's, revered within the Democratic Party. But he's sort of, his political positions oftentimes are more aligned with Republicans, and the donors that he's courting are often Republicans. And so it's sort of it's sort of unlike what his uncles and other family members have sort of done in public office.
You've followed money and politics for a while. Is it normal for a candidate with this much net worth, 15 million, to be courting small donors?
Yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily uncommon. It's a little, usually when somebody of, maybe his wealth runs for president, a lot of the time they're sort of at least partially bankrolling themselves. Past Kennedys have given some of their own money to their efforts. When Michael Bloomberg ran for president, he put a lot of money into that, and so it's a little bit interesting to see somebody who's sort of not putting any of their own money into it. But look, Donald Trump did the exact same thing. He didn't really put money into his campaign at all, and instead, courted small donors, especially in the beginning, and took a lot of money from sort of big interests along the way, and is doing it again. So it's a little bit uncommon, but there's definitely precedent.
Forbes has been looking into the finances of all of the candidates. How does RFK Jr.'s net worth stack up to the other ones?
Yeah, so I mean, as you might imagine, he's certainly one of the wealthier candidates running for president in 2024. But I think you might think of him as being sort of among the richest of the rich, and that's definitely not the case. 15 million puts him not too much above President Joe Biden, who we estimate to be worth 10 million, and it puts him very far away from somebody like Vivek Ramaswamy, who's worth hundreds of millions. At least 630 million, I think, was our most recent estimate for him, and it puts him nowhere near somebody like Donald Trump, who we estimate to be worth $2.5 billion. So he's sort of in that camp of, definitely a wealthy candidate running for president, but nowhere near those people. And if you look back at past campaigns, we had several billionaires sort of test the waters, in past years. And you even had, somebody like Mitt Romney or something who is noticeably wealthier than Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
You could call Robert F. Kennedy Jr. a long shot in this election. In national polls, Biden is far away the leader in the Democrat primary. But traditionally, does a presidential run help or hurt someone's net worth?
Yeah, so it really depends on the candidate. But sometimes going into public office and foregoing being in the business sector, can hurt your net worth, at least in the short term. But oftentimes, the added exposure from running a campaign, especially a national campaign for president, is good for business. And even going into business, or into government, you can get book deals and go work as a lobbyist and things like that. And for somebody like RFK Jr., who runs an environmental law firm, has a nonprofit, and is an author, and sort of has had a long career, partially finding ways to profit off of his celebrity and his name. This is good. This is good for business. You're drawing more attention to the things that you're passionate about, and to the things that you're sort of in business to address, like his law firm. I mean, it would be not inconceivable that he would be drawing more business to the firm over the long run by raising his national profile even higher.
Chase, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.